Angela Brooks was only 23 when she gave birth to 5 children in one night, and lost one on paper forever. It was a stormy March evening in 1992, and the maternity ward of Atlanta City Hospital was already operating at full capacity. Angela clutched her swollen belly as a contraction tore through her, sweat soaking through her faded t-shirt. Her husband, Marcus, held her hand with a forced calm, but his eyes betrayed panic. "They said triplets," Angela groaned, her breath short and ragged. "That's what the last ultrasound showed," Marcus replied, wiping her forehead.
"Juste bret, baby."
But the tension in the room shifted the moment the monitors picked up a 4th heartbeat. Then a 5th. "Doctor," the nurse said, her voice tight, "we have 5 heartbeats." "That's not possible," the doctor muttered, frowning at the monitor. Angela gritted her teeth. "You better not be joking." No one was joking. What followed was chaos: scrubs, metal trays clattering, sharp orders being thrown like knives across the room.
One by one, 5 tiny cripierst the air.
The room stilled with each new life.
5 babies.
5 perfectly alive, wriggling, screaming babies. Black as night, small as kittens, their wrists tagged with identical blue bands that read Brooks. Nurses placed them gently in pink and white blankets. Marcus looked as though he'd been punched. 5, he whispered.
"Angela, we've got 5.
Angela glared at him.
"No shit, Marcus.
Go get me some damn water." But even in the throes of exhaustion, Angela felt a rising fear she couldn't name. By morning, word had spread. A black woman in inner-city Atlanta giving birth to quintuplets? It was a headline before it was a celebration. Cameras arrived. A local station barged in with a reporter and demanded interviews. Hospital PR swept in with smiles and paperwork. The hospital administrator paid a visit, flanked by 2 sharply dressed men who weren't doctors. Angela, groggy from painkillers and labor, was asked to step into a side office. Marcus followed, still smelling of motor oil and panic. "Mrs. Brooks," the administrator said smoothly, "first, congratulations. This is a miracle." "Damn right," Angela replied. "They're all healthy. All 5. The administrator's smile tightened. "Yes, well.
Det är swear complicated. Angela S. body stiffened."
There was an oversight, he continued. "Our prenatal records show triplets. Then the 4th. We weren't prepared for a 5th. And?" Marcus asked, narrowing his eyes. "And we need time to verify records. The press is going to pick this up. If the story gets out of control, it could damage more than just your privacy. There are legal implications, insurance, Medicaid filings, state intervention." Angela folded her arms. "What the hell does that mean?" A silence. Then the man in the gray suit stepped in. "We're asking you to allow us to register 4 of the babies. 1, Jayla, can be listed as stillborn. On paper. Just until we sort this out. It's a temporary measure." Angela's mouth dropped open.
"You want me to lie?"
"It's for your protection," he said quickly. "Look, Mrs. Brooks, a low-income black family with quintuplets is going to be a media circus. DCF might get involved. They might question your ability to care for 5 infants. There's risk here. But if you cooperate, we can shield you from that."
Angela S. atraced.
Marcus looked stunned, like he couldn't even process the words. "And what if I don't cooperate?" she asked. "Then DCF will be notified that there's a discrepancy in medical records and living children. You'll be flagged for possible neglect or fraud. It's a matter of protocol." Marcus exploded.
"This is bullshit.
You're threatening us." "Sir, this is just policy." Angela held up her hand. "What if I agree?" The man's smile returned. "We'll handle everything. The record will say 1 baby was lost during labor. The other 4 will be legally yours."
"No question. No mediastorm."
"We'll clean it up." Angela looked down at the clipboard in front of her.
A single line, Jayla Brooks, stillborn, 3h41 du matin.
She saw her daughter's face in her mind, pink and loud and furious, born with a scream and fists already clenched. She was the second to come out. Not even the smallest.
Just, unexpected. Angela S. en trembled.
She glanced at Marcus, whose fists were clenched. Then back at the paper. "Give me another form," she said. The men looked confused. "I'll sign your lie," Angela continued, voice cold. "But I want my own copy. And I'm switching names." The administrator blinked. "Excuse me. I'm giving the name Jayla to another one. One that'll be in your system. You can call whichever baby you want stillborn on paper. But my Jayla is going home. And I'm going to remember exactly who she is." Marcus's voice was low.
Angela, what are you doing?
"Protecting my child," she said, eyes blazing. "If they're going to erase one of them, it won't be her." So she switched the names. The name Jayla Brooks went to a healthier baby, who would be officially documented and follow a paper trail. The real Jayla, the second born, the loud one, was written off as dead. But Angela made a note in her worn Bible, beside 5 tiny inked fingerprints she forced the nurse to give her. Later that night, in room 304, Angela sat alone while her 5 babies slept in plastic cribs around her. "You're all here," she whispered, touching each one's cheek. "No matter what the world says.
You're mine.
And I'll lie to the end of time to keep you safe." And so the lie was born. Not from shame, but from desperation. And love. And the belief that sometimes, the only way to protect your children is to break the rules meant to break you. Jayla Brooks had always felt slightly outside of herself, like a guest in her own life. By 2023, the Brooks quintuplets were grown, 31 years old, scattered but never too far from the house they grew up in on the south side of Atlanta. They all still visited regularly, especially since Angela's health had begun to decline. She had early-onset dementia, and though there were good days, more often than not, she lived in a fog of old memories and unfinished thoughts. Grace, the most nurturing of the 5, had moved back in to care for her. She'd become a nurse, just like the woman who had stayed past her shift in 1992 to help Angela figure out how to breastfeed 5 hungry babies. Grace was the type to find meaning in things like that. Jayla, on the other hand, had taken a different path. She worked temp jobs here and there, waitressing, customer service, tutoring. She had a head for business, but no degree.
No réelle documentation.
No social security number that matched her name. There had always been a roadblock between her and progress, a wall she could never see but always crashed into. Sometimes, she wondered if it was just the system. Other times, in the quiet of night, she wondered if it was her. On their 31st birthday, Grace organized a small dinner. Elijah brought a bottle of wine and a Bluetooth speaker. Micah brought homemade cupcakes and a bouquet of flowers for Angela. Noah showed up late, smelling like motor oil and cigarettes, but he came, which was what mattered. Angela didn't recognize them at first. "Where are my babies?" she asked, sitting at the table in her bathrobe.
Where's my Jayla?
Jayla's hand froze over her plate. Grace gently rubbed her mother's back. "They're here, Mama."
Oui, au lire.
Angela looked around the room, her eyes searching, as if trying to match faces to names she couldn't quite remember. Finally, she looked at Jayla and smiled. "There you are," she whispered.
You're my second one. Ludest little scream je verheard.
Jayla forced a smile, but said nothing. Later that night, after everyone had left and the dishes were stacked in the sink, Jayla found a plain envelope slid under the front door. There was no return address.
No name.
Just a faint smell of mothballs and old paper. Inside was a yellowed Polaroid photograph, 5 black newborns in pink and white swaddles, lying side by side in hospital bassinets. Each had a blue band on their wrist with tiny, barely legible writing. On the back of the photo, written in neat cursive, was a single sentence. "You were never supposed to know." Jayla stared at the words for a long time. The next morning, she showed the photo to Grace. "Do you think this is from Mom?" Jayla asked. Grace turned the photo over in her hands, squinting. "Maybe. Or someone from the hospital. She called me her second one last night." Grace nodded slowly.
You were born second.
Jayla hesitated. "I was."
Yeah, I remember. She used to say it all the time.
"You came out screaming like you were already mad at the world."
Jayla exhaled, her voice quiet.
"I've always felt misplaced." Grace didn't laugh. Instead, she pulled open a drawer and removed a worn leather binder Angela had kept since they were kids. Inside were charts, vaccination cards, scribbled notes, feeding schedules, every milestone tracked obsessively. Each child had a tab.
Elia,
Micah,
Grace,
Noah, then Jayla. But the Jayla tab was different. There were no official records. Just handwritten notes. Photos taped in with dates scribbled underneath. A lock of hair. A baby tooth in a plastic bag. And a page torn from a Bible with 5 fingerprints pressed in faded ink. Grace looked at her sister, her voice barely audible. There's no birth certificate here.
Note for you.
Jayla's breath caught in her throat. What are you saying? I'm saying, maybe there never was one. Later that week, Jayla confronted Elijah. You ever wonder why everything's always worked out for you? She asked him. Why your names always matched your paperwork? Elijah blinked, caught off guard. What are you talking about? Your name. Jayla. That was supposed to be mine. He stared at her, confused. Then, something shifted in his expression.
Affliqué of doux.
Memory. Jayla tossed the photo on the table. That's us. 5 babies. But Mom only filed for 4 birth certificates. Elijah picked up the photo, his face pale. This can't be right. Do you have your birth certificate? He didn't answer. Jayla's voice hardened. Because I don't. I've never had one. Every job I apply for, every application I fill out, it hits a wall. You think that's coincidence? Elijah looked down, eyes wet. I didn't know. But you suspected. He nodded slowly. That night, the siblings gathered in the living room. Angela sat in her rocking chair, silent, a blanket over her lap. They confronted her, voices raised, questions flying. Why are there only 4 birth certificates? Who is Jayla, really? Why did you hide this? Angela said nothing for a long time. Then she spoke, slowly, clearly. You'll find the truth. But don't come blaming me when you do.
Blaming you.
Jayla snapped.
You erased me.
Angela's voice was sharp.
No. I savait you.
Micah looked at her. From what? Angela's eyes went distant. From a system that would have taken you all. Grace whispered, Mom, what did you do? Angela turned toward Jayla. You were the second one. You were healthy. Loud. Strong. But the hospital, her voice cracked, they said 5 was too many. They said a black family with 5 babies would make the state nervous. That it would attract the wrong kind of attention. She looked down at her hands. So I signed the paper. Said one was stillborn. But I switched your names. I kept my Jayla. And I gave her another name. So one of you could survive on paper. And one of you could survive in my arms. The room fell silent.
Jayla s'en shook.
Elijah stepped back like he'd been slapped. Grace wiped her face, tears streaking her cheeks. Angela looked up at her children, her voice hoarse. I never stopped loving any of you. But I did what I had to do. Because they would have torn you apart if I hadn't. Jayla stared at her mother. And what am I now, Mom? She asked quietly. A ghost? A lie.
Angela whispered, You're mean.
But Jayla wasn't sure that was enough anymore. Noah was the first to break the silence. So you're saying, he said, his voice low measured, you forged our identities. Angela didn't look up from her lap. I preserved them. Jayla paced the living room floor, her fists clenched.
You signed a death certificate with my name on it.
You told the government I was dead. And because of that, Elijah added, I've been living under a name that doesn't even belong to me. Micah sat on the arm of the couch, rubbing his temples like he was trying to physically push the headache out of his head. Grace stood by the window, her hand pressed to the glass, not looking at anyone.
Angela's voice trembled.
They said you'd be taken. All of you. Separated. Put in the system. We could have survived that, Jayla snapped. What you did, this, isn't surviving. It's disappearing. Angela looked up at her daughter. Would you have preferred the truth if it meant growing up without your brothers and sister? Living in foster homes, being adopted out separately, never knowing who you were? I couldn't let that happen. Jayla's jaw tightened. You didn't give me the choice. And I'd do it again, Angela said.
In a heartbeat.
Marcus, who had remained silent in the hallway, finally stepped into the room. He looked older than he had in years, shoulders stooped, eyes tired. She tried to tell me, he said. Back then. I told her not to. Said it would ruin everything. And it has. Angela turned toward him, shocked. You said we had to protect them. I said we should tell them when they were old enough, Marcus said.
Not carry it like a dame secret to the grave.
But I was scared, Angela said quietly. Every time I saw a patrol car on our street. Every time someone from the state sent us a letter. I thought they knew. I thought they were coming. Jayla stopped pacing.
You raised me to be prou. To speak the truth.
And now I find out my entire life is a cover-up?
You made me invisible.
Micah spoke for the first time. She made sure we all stayed together. Elijah cut in sharply. At the cost of the law. At the cost of our futures. Jayla turned toward him.
Easy for you to say.
You got a social security number. A college degree. A real job. I've been turned away from every career path I've ever tried. I didn't know, Elijah said. You suspected, she replied. Didn't you ever wonder why things lined up so perfectly for you? I thought I was lucky, Elijah whispered. Lucky, Jayla repeated, as if the word itself was foreign.
You've been living my life. The hectic end.
Grace finally turned from the window.
What do we do now?
Jayla crossed her arms. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Angela's face drained of color. What? I didn't know what I was looking for until I found the photo, Jayla said. But once I knew something was off, I had to understand my options. You're going to sue your own mother? Marcus asked, disbelief on his face. Jayla didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any confirmation.
Angela shook her head.
You think the courts are going to fix this? You think they'll look at our situation and care? This wasn't about money. It was survival. But it was still fraud, Elijah said. And if anyone finds out about me, I could lose everything. You think I don't know that? Angela snapped. I've been holding this secret in my bones for 31 years. Every time one of you walked out that door, I prayed nobody would ask the wrong question. Jayla's eyes narrowed.
So you made US live in fear too?
No, Angela said. I took the fear on myself. Grace stepped between them, her hands up. Enough. This is helping no one. Micah stood.
She's right.
We need to think clearly. Jayla looked at each of her siblings, anger simmering under her skin. I've been erased.
For 31 years. And you all want me to be okay with that.
Noah spoke, his voice unusually gentle. We don't want you to be okay with it. We want to fix it. How? Jayla asked. You can't rewrite 31 years of legal records. Elijah looked at her. Maybe not. But we can start by telling the truth. To who? Marcus asked. The government? The press?
Disselter the family à part.
It already has, Jayla said. Angela stood from her chair, slower than she once would have, but still with the fire that had carried her through decades of hardship. I did what I thought was right, she said.
He gave you all a life together.
A home. A family. If I had told the truth, you'd have grown up strangers.
Jayla's voice cracked.
But I'm still a stranger. To everyone. Including myself. Angela reached out, but Jayla stepped back. I don't want your apologies, she said.
You want my name.
Elijah looked at Jayla, guilt etched into every line of his face. Then I'll give it back. Everyone turned to him. I'll go to the authorities, he said. I'll explain. I'll help fix the records. If it means you get to exist properly, then it's what I should have done long ago. Jayla's eyes searched his.
You did give up your identity for me.
It was never mine to begin with, he said. Angela sank back into her chair, tears rolling down her cheeks. Grace sat beside her and took her hand. Micah looked at the others.
So we tell the truth.
All of it. Jayla nodded slowly. And we see where it takes us. But inside, she knew, this wasn't about records, or legality, or even forgiveness. It was about being seen, being known, being real, even if it shattered the illusion of everything that came before. It had been 3 days since Jayla disappeared. She left no note, no phone call, no explanation.
Juste silence.
Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her small apartment, barely furnished, was untouched except for one thing: a missing duffel bag and a photo from a hospital, 5 infants, bundled in pink and white. Grace found the door unlocked when she went to check. The lights were off, the fridge half-stocked, laundry in a pile on the couch. Jayla hadn't planned a long trip. She hadn't packed like she was going away. It felt like she had simply vanished. Marcus drove around the city for hours, stopping by the diner where Jayla used to work, the library where she'd sometimes go to use the internet, even the park near their old elementary school. No one had seen her. No one had heard from her. Angela sat in her rocker by the window, staring out like she might see her daughter walking up the front steps. But Jayla didn't come. "She's gone," Elijah said softly on the 4th night, standing in the living room with his siblings.
Because of me.
"It's not just you," Noah said, arms folded. "We all played our part. Even by staying silent once we knew." Grace looked toward their mother's room. "She blames herself." "She should," Elijah said, a little too sharply. Micah shot him a warning look. "She's old. She's sick." "She's the reason Jayla doesn't exist," Elijah snapped. "I've had everything handed to me because of a lie. And she got nothing." There was a silence. Heavy.
Inconfortable.
"She's not nothing," Grace said. "She's our sister." "She doesn't feel like it," Elijah murmured.
Not anymore.
Angela hadn't spoken much since the confrontation. She drifted in and out of lucidity, sometimes calling Jayla by name, sometimes forgetting she existed at all. Once, she woke in the middle of the night calling out for the second baby, over and over until Marcus had to soothe her back to sleep. The 5th day brought rain. Long, gray sheets of it. Grace stayed up late, reading over the legal documents Jayla had filed weeks before. Among them was a petition, unfiled, for name restoration. Jayla had planned to go to court. She had gathered evidence: the photo, copies of the forged paperwork, even old letters from Angela to a friend, in which she mentioned all 5 children by name. She had built a case to reclaim her identity. And then she had vanished. Micah suggested calling the police, but Marcus hesitated. "What are we gonna tell them?" he asked. "That we lost a daughter the government thinks never existed?" "We say she's missing," Grace argued.
Déteste the truth.
"And what if they dig?" Marcus said. "What if they uncover everything?" "Then maybe it's time," Elijah said. "Maybe that's what it takes for her to be found." But Angela shook her head from the corner, her voice soft and hoarse. "No," she said. "They'll bury her again." The siblings turned. Angela looked older than ever. Her skin sagged around her cheeks. Her eyes were hollow. "You don't understand," she said. "This country doesn't fix what it breaks. It just forgets. I lied to keep her from being forgotten." Grace approached her slowly.
Mama, she's gone.
Angela nodded. "I know," she whispered. "And I don't blame her." "Then who do you blame?" "Myself," Angela said, voice breaking. "Because I thought I could outsmart the world. I thought if I hid her well enough, I could protect her from being hurt. But I was the one who hurt her most." She looked up at Elijah. "And I'm sorry. I stole from you too." Elijah knelt beside her chair. "You did what you thought was right." Angela took his hand. "But what's right for one child shouldn't cost another her existence." Later that night, Elijah couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo again.
5 babies. One future stolen. Another borrowed.
He opened his laptop and began drafting a statement.
It started simple.
"My name is Elijah Brooks, and I've been living under a name that isn't mine." He kept typing. He told the story, how his mother made an impossible choice, how one sister was erased to protect them all, how he unknowingly benefited from it. He wrote about Jayla, her laughter, her anger, her brilliance, and her absence. When he finished, he saved it as a draft. He didn't hit send. Not yet. The following morning, Marcus found something in the mail. A letter, postmarked from Savannah. It was addressed to the Brooks family. Inside was a single page, written in Jayla's handwriting. I needed time. I needed space to remember who I am without being reminded of who I was supposed to be.
Don't look for me.
I'm safe. I've hired a new lawyer. I'm filing again, under my name.
My real name.
But I won't be coming back. Not yet.
Meb no te ver.
I love you all, but I need to know what it feels like to exist without permission. Jayla. Grace read the letter aloud, her voice breaking near the end. Noah turned away, his jaw tight. Micah wiped his eyes and nodded.
She's alive. That is what matters.
Angela didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and whispered her daughter's name like a prayer. Jayla. 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 As if saying it enough times might make it true again. That night, Elijah sat in front of his laptop again. This time, he hit send. The story broke 2 weeks after Elijah pressed send. It started with a local journalist, someone he remembered from high school, now working for an independent news site that specialized in stories the mainstream ignored. Elijah's email had landed in her inbox late at night. By morning, she had called him for an interview. Then came the follow-ups. National outlets.
Podcast. Morning news.
Online articles with titles like Erased at Birth, A Sister's Fight to Exist, and The Lie That Saved a Family. The story hit a nerve, not just because it was heartbreaking, but because it was true. Because it echoed something too many had experienced in silence, being told by the system that they didn't count, didn't belong, didn't exist. The photograph went viral, 5 babies lined up in hospital bassinets, tiny fists clenched, blue wristbands barely visible. Beside it, a quote from Jayla's letter. I need to know what it feels like to exist without permission. Angela refused most interviews. She watched from her armchair in the living room, blankets wrapped tight around her shoulders, as her family's secret became public knowledge. Sometimes she turned off the television halfway through a segment. Other times, she watched it until her eyes filled with tears. She's out there telling the world, she murmured one evening, as Grace sat beside her. And she's not even angry anymore. She's telling the truth, Grace said gently. Angela nodded. That's what I always wanted her to have. Even if I didn't give it to her myself. The hospital issued a statement a week later. Carefully worded. Legally cautious. They acknowledged record-keeping discrepancies, apologized for the distress caused, and pledged to review historical cases to ensure full accountability. But they never admitted what really happened. They never said the word erased. Still, the public saw it for what it was. Angela Brooks became a quiet symbol of resistance. Some praised her. Others condemned her. Talk shows debated her choices. Was she a mother who saved her children, or a criminal who rewrote reality? Was her lie noble or selfish? But for Jayla, it was never about public opinion. It was about being seen. She remained in Savannah, living in a modest apartment above a bookstore. She kept her phone off most of the time, spoke only to her lawyer, and worked part-time under her real name, no aliases, no borrowed identity. Her court hearing came in early November. The judge, an older black woman with a stern face and tired eyes, read through the case file in silence. Jayla stood alone before the bench, dressed plainly, her posture straight. You're asking to have your name recognized legally for the first time, the judge said.
Yes, Your Honor.
There's no official record of your birth. You understand the implications of that.
I do.
You've lived 31 years without existing on paper.
Why come forward now?
Jayla looked up, her voice calm. Because I want to exist on purpose. The courtroom was quiet. The judge nodded once. Petition granted. Jayla walked out of the courthouse with a folder in her hands. Inside, a certificate bearing her name. Not Elijah's. Not a name borrowed from paperwork or survival. Her own.
Jayla Marie Brooks.
It was the first time the world had ever written it down. Back in Atlanta, Elijah stood in front of a classroom full of high school seniors. He had started volunteering at a community program that mentored kids navigating life without stable family records or documentation. Immigrants, foster children, kids like Jayla. He told them her story. Not to shock them.
Not to inspire pity.
But to show them that survival could be reclaimed. That erasure was not the same as absence. That being undocumented didn't mean being unloved. She didn't disappear, he said one afternoon. She stepped out of the shadow someone else built for her. Angela died the following spring. She passed away quietly in her sleep, with Grace holding one hand and Marcus holding the other. In her final moments, she whispered all 5 names. One by one. Elia, Micah, Noah,
Grace,
Jayla. At her memorial service, the family gathered in the backyard where the Quintuplets had once played as children. They planted a magnolia tree in her memory. Jayla did not attend in person, but she sent a letter to be read aloud. Grace stood at the front, her voice steady.
My Mutterlied.
And because of that lie, I am still here. I grew up loved. I grew up whole. But I also grew up invisible. Now, I am claiming both truths.
The pain and the love. The lie and the life.
She paused.
I forgiver.
But more importantly, I forgive myself for needing that forgiveness. As Grace folded the letter and placed it at the base of the tree, Jayla stood hundreds of miles away in front of a mirror, watching herself. She smiled. Not the forced smile she used to wear when trying to be polite. Not the tight-lipped grin that masked discomfort. A real one. Quiet. Certain. Her own. Later that year, a news station aired a follow-up segment. They showed the photo of the Quintuplets again. 5 newborns. 5 lives. 5 names. The narrator's voice asked a single question. What would you do if the world told you that you were never born? Would you stay silent, or make them remember?
The camera faded to black.
But the story was far from over. Because once you reclaim your name, your story begins again.